This is Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast, with your hosts, Brandon Spinner and Michael Burns.
And welcome into another episode of Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. I am Brandon Spinner alongside Michael Burns on episode 11 here on Wednesday, December the 7th. Michael, how are you tonight?
I'm freaking tired of this rain, Brandon. Please stop.
Yeah, man,
whatever they're paying you, I will pay it double.
But 2.5 insult.
Whatever. I'll take it. I'm tired of this rain. We have this new hot tub that I built the special pad for and everything in back.
I forgot about that.
It's hard to do that in the freaking rain. It's not enjoyable. We don't get to do that. So please, Brandon. I know you are. Whatever you predict just happens. So please.
Yeah, whatever I predict just happens, and I predicted the same thing here in the tri-state, and we've had rain pretty much for 3 days, and it's been gloomy and crummy here as well. It's just been like dreary all over the place, man.
Right. My daughter's like, "Hey, is it nighttime already?" I'm like, "No, it's just freaking cloudy."
Well, see, that's the thing. We want it to be nighttime for our daughter because she won't go to bed until she's like, "It's not dark out." I'm like, "It's freaking 7 p.m. Of course it's dark out." You can't say that. But, it's been gloomy. I wish I could change it. If I could, I would. But
I wish.
Yeah,
no.
you pay me
okay,
2.5
Brandon,
times.
okay.
Yeah, no. What'd you call me, an alien last night? On Instagram Live. And if you missed our Instagram Live last night, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Barrels and Barrels Pod, where you can get more content. Follow us live when we do go live, and just some other cool, quirky stuff about us. And that's where we do a lot more interacting with you guys, our listeners and our viewers, who also can view us on YouTube as well. This is episode 11. I'm Brandon, as you see on YouTube, and Michael is off on the right side of your screen. We're missing a third member, and unfortunately, we've got some sad news to pass along on that. Michael and I are here, and that's who it's going to be here over the next couple of weeks, as Kyle has stepped away from the podcast for some mental health and personal reasons. He's got a lot going on, and it was better for him and his family to walk away from Barrels and Barrels for now. So the BNB team is Brandon and Michael, but this pour, as we'll rate here shortly, this one's for you, Kyle. Kyle is who got us here. Kyle got us to where we are right now, and we couldn't do this without him. Yeah, so thank you to Kyle. We miss you, buddy. But I know he's listening because he's going to continue to listen. He's just got other things. So reach out to Kyle. Tell him best wishes. He's a great dude, and we were happy to be part of his team and happy to have him as part of our team. So cheers to you, Kyle. This pour of this bourbon this week is for you. Last week, Mike, we talked about the Christmas season. What did we do? Christmas desserts last year? Or no, favorite Christmas movies, right? It was Thanksgiving desserts, Christmas movies. Turbo Man. Very underrated Jingle All the Way. This week, I was thinking, okay, is there a tradition you guys do? Like, or that you guys did growing up? That you're continuing or you loved? What is your favorite tradition, or are there traditions that you want to start with your own family? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, we used to always do Christmas in Chicago because that's where we moved from Alabama from, and so we'd always go up. That's the worst time to go to freaking Chicago, was in the winter. We'd drive from nice, probably potentially 60-degree weather on Christmas to 6 feet of snow. So I always missed home. You know, either I had friends that I wanted to spend time with during the Christmas break. I was always gone. There was an Auburn baseball camp that all my friends went to. I wasn't able to go to because it was during the time I was in Chicago. But now because of that, I enjoy being home. My new tradition with my family and my 2 little girls, we get to be home on Christmas Day, Christmas morning, waking up in their own bed, seeing their Christmas tree. Bonnie got a one of the push carts. What do you call the car with the eyes on the front?
The
coupe car.
Yeah, Kitty Coop or something like that. I know what you're talking about.
I built that. You know, when she went to sleep Christmas Eve, I built that, and we put all the big stuff together. So that's fun for me and my wife to do. And so I just enjoy the new tradition of being home for Christmas.
That's a good. I mean, home is the most special place in your life, right? Home is where you're the most comfortable. That makes sense.
Right.
I grew up with my family. I grew up divorced parents, so we had different traditions growing up. My favorite tradition probably was on my mom's side. My grandparents always held that side of the family's Christmas on the Sunday before Christmas. So whether that was the 18th or the 23rd, whatever that Sunday was before Christmas, this year it's going to be on the Sunday a week before Christmas because Christmas is a Sunday this year. So unless Christmas fell on a Sunday, it was the Sunday before. And we would always get together. They had this cool thing that I thought was like amazing, and now there's science behind it. Now I realize why I loved it. But it was like a merry-go-round carousel of like stick figures made of wood. I don't know if it's German or Belgian, but I saw a couple of them in Belgium, and I sent the picture to my grandma when we went a couple years ago. There's like 3 or 4 different levels or tiers to the merry-go-round, and there's candles on every side, and you light the candles, and the heat from the candles wafts up into a fan at the top, and that fan is what propels the merry-go-round
Each like
around.
thing that you would ride on a merry-go-round is a candle.
Yeah. No. So the candles are outside the merry-go-round. We'll post a picture on our Instagram story or something for those of you listening. A couple of you might know what I'm talking about, but it's really cool. It's got like a European feel to it. It was just kind of something different that you don't always see.
That you remember as for your Christmas
that I remember.
time.
And it's one of those things anytime I see my grandma, we go to hers, as I mentioned, every Sunday before Christmas, she always brings it out, and I always get to now be the one who lights the candle. So I like that. As far as the tradition here, growing up, we had the elf on the shelf, but before the elf on the shelf was a thing, it's like a different branded elf. You move it every night. And it's watching you, like it's reporting back to Santa. And the thing was, my mom started this before Elf on the Shelf was even a thing.
Before it was cool.
It was like 1992 or 93, like when I was like a young kid. So the elf reported to Santa, and if it didn't move at night, you were bad that day before. So like you were always on your best behavior that day. Most of the time, it meant the parents forgot.
Yeah, the parents forgot.
Now that I'm doing it.
Yeah. Or it was a Friday night and you guys had,
got a little too tipsy or something like that. But yeah, so we do that. Aubrey loves trying to find it, and that's a reminder that I got to move it before she wakes up in the morning. But the elf
just grab
on the shelf,
it and just toss it across the room. Doesn't matter where it lands.
Well, so the other thing is you're not allowed to touch it because it'll lose the magic, and won't be able to get back to Santa to tell him at night.
He landed on the box of cookies, Aubrey.
Can't open the cookies.
Can't open them.
But now that I'm a parent, I love having that as a child growing up with it, that I can now okay, this is something I want to pass along with Aubrey growing up in her time. So that's a tradition as well.
That's cool.
Speaking of tradition, we're 11 episodes in. Hopefully it's a tradition in your family to listen to Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, this is our call to you. Could you please do us a favor and rate and review our podcast? The higher rating it gets and the more reviews it gets, the higher it shows up in other people's "This is for you" category on both of those platforms. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and you're listening on our podcast itself, all you have to do is click the name of our podcast, and as you're doing that, it'll take you right to the page, and you scroll all the way down, and there will be a 5-star thing at the bottom right there.
Man,
just
I
click
can
5
read
stars,
that,
write a
Brandon.
review.
This is also everyone who's watching on YouTube can read that because Brandon has new equipment now that you can look how pretty he is now with his new camera.
This is a professional. I didn't even wash my makeup off today. No, actually, I did that before we started recording. Yes, I wear makeup. But on Spotify, click on our podcast, and it'll take you right to our podcast page. And what you do from there is you can rate and review us by searching all of that there. So please, 5 stars. And if you don't want to rate us a 5-star and you've got a complaint, email us your complaint or DM us on Instagram. We'll try to fix it, and then maybe 5 stars later on. Subscribe to us as well, not only on Spotify or on Apple, but also on YouTube. That would be great. We're at, I think, almost 30 subscribers on YouTube, but we've got a lot more listeners on all of our streaming platforms. So thank you to each and everyone who've listened. Please review us. We've got 2 5-star reviews that have reviews on them. We've got a couple more 5-star just ratings already. So rate and review. That would be great. Can that be our Christmas gift, right?
I mean,
that's our Christmas gift.
We've got a holiday, a Christmas giveaway coming up soon. So be sure to listen for that.
Yes. So we are Bourbon and Baseball Podcast. Let's jump into bourbon, Mike.
Yes, please.
This week, it's well. Before we get into bourbon, real quick, this is kind of bourbon-y.
And this is moving into your Christmas tradition, right?
Yeah, so kind of a Christmas tradition as an adult. The Goose Island thing is more of a Black Friday tradition. A lot of people wait in line on Black Friday for that. Here in North Alabama, we've got a pretty big distillery. Not North Alabama.
Here in North Alabama. Yeah, baby.
Yeah. Here in Northern Kentucky. Man, I'm so used to saying that in my forecast over the last 6 years.
Coming across Mississippi here, we got this cell coming across.
So in Northern Kentucky, we've got a pretty big brewery called Braxton Brewing Company. They do something similar to what Goose Island does. They do a bourbon barrel aged beer. Like, they've got a whole different line for Goose Island. Braxton had, I think, 7 different beers this year. This one was like an event only thing. They call it their Dark Charge line, and the B line is like a touristic bourbon line here in Northern Kentucky that you can go to. There's like 15 stops, and you can get a passport checked off. So the B line beer this year was the Chocolate Pretzel Bourbon Ball from Braxton Brewing Company. But the cool part is we've got a couple distilleries up here. There goes my Powerade cap. And this beer was aged in barrels from New Riff, Boone County Distilling, and Pogue Distillery. So those are 3 of the distilleries. We've talked
about 2 of them. The third one we haven't.
Yeah,
Boog.
No, I haven't done too much about Pogue, Pogue, since 1876. So it's an older distillery. But this is supposed to be like a pretty dark. It's got cocoa and pretzel. It's aged with cocoa nibs and pretzel. It says. Or cacao, Cacao. But I was excited to grab this at the cacao. I was happy to grab that at the brewery last week.
Did you stand in line for that? You said it was a day-only event. Did you stand in line for that?
Yeah, it was a day-only event. So that was the day my daughter had the flu last week, and she wanted to get out of the house. And this was after the flu had basically broke.
Yeah.
No, she literally was screaming and crying. I want to go shopping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, all right.
So you took her to liquor shopping?
So there was 150 bottles of this, both Friday and Saturday. They had 300 total, and they kept them out 2 of those per day, or 2 days, 150 per day. And I thought I got there at 2:50 for a 3:00 release, just showing up to see whether or not how bad the line was. I was like 23rd in line. So
and Aubrey was 24th.
I was able to grab
right?
one of those. Yeah, Aubrey was 24th. No, I got another bottle.
Another bottle? Yeah, Aubrey got the second one for you. Sorry.
Yeah, Aubrey got the second. No, I ordered this online. So the first one was a brewery only release for those 2 days. The other one you could pre-order. This one is called the Buskin Really Happy Cookie Beer. It's a bourbon barrel aged imperial stout. So Buskin is a very famous bakery here in town, and their bakery goods are incredibly delicious. So this one, it's got like a smiley face. That's their logo. They give you a smiley face cookie with the beer. But from someone who had a tasting of it the day that they had that party, the VIP event, they said it tastes just like the Buskin sugar cookie. So I'm kind of excited. This is like a new Christmas tradition, like you said.
Go find those.
But
yeah. So
maybe
you plan on
we'll
opening those up on Christmas, or you have a planned date?
Maybe one that I'll open up on Christmas, and then you'll be my planned date to open up the other day, the other bottle. Whenever you come up and visit, we'll do maybe a bourbon
We've had
beer.
2 different planned dates. I almost came up here this weekend, previous weekends.
well, your boy is going to have a lot of time off here in the next year because my PTO kicks in. And then also I've got a lot of comp time. So I'll be taking some time off. So we'll have to plan it around when you're able to come up, or we can meet somewhere, or we can do the Bourbon Trail and do a live podcast somewhere and just plug our mics into a computer and record. But what's going on in the bourbon world? We talked about that release. Let's go into our bourbon review. This week, it's kind of ironic. We planned this out weeks ahead. I swear to God, folks. Right, Mikey, did we not talk about this like 2.5 weeks ago when we were planning out when
we tried to plan out because of the holidays. We needed to plan out when we were doing recordings and what we were going to drinking.
And what samples of each thing we have. We both have a bottle of 1792 full proof, but... We both got this. Was it last Christmas? When did we get this?
No, it was right as you left me in spring.
I think that's when I gave you the bottle because I think that's when it came. But I think the pre-order was it was late January.
Did you ship this to me or did we pick it up locally?
No, I gave it to you. Like I brought it to you. I didn't ship it to you. I wouldn't spend that much. Come on.
I do remember. I remember you sent me the picture that it shipped. I remember that.
Yeah. I had them both shipped to my house. BourbonFinds is a great follow on Instagram. And why I say it's ironic is he's currently running the BourbonFinds Instagram bracket for the best whiskey account on Instagram. I say it's ironic because I made the cut to the top 64, and somehow I made it through the first round and I'm in the top 32.
I mean, bro, you've got a reel that has, over 115,000 views.
Well, speaking of that, go check out _whiskey_fly. He just went from like 3,000 followers
10, right?
to 10 within the last 5 weeks. So my 2,147. That's funny you say that 'cause
I just shared one of his reels.
Was it the don't follow me for
no, I don't remember
money?
I forget what it was. But
he blew up. Yeah, he blew up. So cheers to him. But yes, 1792. This is a single barrel select from BourbonFinds. And this one is kind of special to the season because, Mikey, what's the sticker on the back say?
Rickhouse Alone. So it's based off of Home Alone, but Rickhouse Alone. And it's the guy, I must protect this house. And then what's it say in the bottom there, Brandon?
It says, don't worry, the plan is foolproof. Like the bottle, because it's like foolproof. But yeah, pretty cool. I'm a huge, Home Alone is my favorite. I think that might be my second favorite. We talked about favorite movies last week, but I have to watch Home Alone. I have to watch. The Grinch is my favorite.
Is it a Christmas movie though, Home Alone?
It's a Christmas season.
Is it a Christmas movie though, or does it just happen to have Christmas in it?
Oh, it's a Christmas movie. I'll watch it at times during the year, but more so, I'm gonna watch it during Christmas. It's a Christmas movie, to me. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I haven't seen Die Hard.
You haven't? Oh my, Michael. Jeremiah Burns. Your homework between now and next week when we record is you have to watch Die Hard.
I'm a terrible movie person. If it has Adam Sandler in it, I've seen it probably. But otherwise,
oh my god. Let's get into the brand. Yeah, brand new bottle. Just popping it open. First pour. So again, BourbonFinds. This is a 125 proof bourbon. So full proof. I'm assuming that's barrel strength, right? Is there a difference between barrel strength?
I didn't think of. I thought they were the same until we say that. But if I Google that real quick.
So this is 125 proof. So while Mikey looks that up, 125 proof bourbon, 1792. This is Barton Distillery, which is also distributed by Buffalo Trace. They are in Bardstown. Very beautiful bottle. I'd describe it with a circular cork knob top.
The gold is very...
Yeah, it's gold. The gold shines around the neck of all the bottles that they have. They have different bottles on their line. The color of the neck of this one is black. That is the full proof color. Single barrel, which I've got on my bar behind me. If you see on YouTube, that's the kind of creamish look to that neck. Red is for small batch, and they've got a high rye. They've got a wheated bourbon, which is the sweet wheat. 12 years the gray, I believe, which I haven't come across of. And yeah, so really good stuff. I've had plenty of 1792. I think of my favorite. Oh, Bottle and Bond is the yellow one. I think Full Proof is probably my go-to. So I'm excited to try this for the first time. Anything I've had from BourbonFinds, which you can find on Instagram, as I mentioned, at BourbonFinds. He's got over 100,000 followers. Anything I've tried from his has been good. I've had a couple of Nulu picks. So cheers to Greg. I'm excited about this. What did you find on the Full Proof Barrel Proof?
So it says this is coalitionbrewing.com's. I've clicked through a couple, but this one says the difference between full proof and barrel proof refers to the strength of the whiskey. Full proof is bottled at exactly 80% ABV, while barrel proof can widely vary in strength. So 80 bottled at 80 APV.
So that's 166.
Bottled. That doesn't follow, because then even the Weller
Bottled at 8.
The Weller full proof does it. If there's a definition for full proof, the Weller full proof is mine's 114. Is yours 114?
Yeah. I think all the Weller full proofs are 114. Any bottle that I've seen has been 114 at least.
Barrel proof is not watered down at all. Well, maybe this article is just the wording's wrong. So I don't know. We need to do some more research.
Guess that's a later date breakdown and research. I would have figured full proof means that it's at the full proof of what it came out of the barrel, and that's what I thought barrel strength meant. I could be wrong. So I guess that is one thing that we're trumped in. We didn't do our homework on, and I will tell you it has been a long week, so our homework may not be as great as it normally is. So my first sniff on this, I got fruit, maybe cherry. I've been getting a lot of cherry lately. But fruit and oak are the first two things. I do get a little bit of baking spice in the other nostril.
Like, you get different smells.
Yeah.
Different nostrils.
So the other day, I don't remember what I was drinking, but I got a way different smell with both nostrils than I did with one nostril or the other.
I'll give it to you. I plugged one nostril. If you can't see what I'm doing, if you're not watching on YouTube, I'm plugging one nostril, sniffing and plugging the other. I 100% get different sense from
right.
How does that make sense though?
It shouldn't, but it does.
I'm not.
And then try with both.
I didn't do it good in anatomy in high school. That's why I went to the math and sciences. Okay.
So fruit, oak are like the first two that I get. I do get a couple of like baking spices hints here. It's kind of a hot nose though.
Get fruit right away and then smacked with spice. It is
right.
It is on the sweeter side. I don't get a heavy oak, but I do get a sweet followed by oak as Brandon's taking a first swig here. But it's what you got there,
That's
buddy?
good. That's good. It's hot. It's hot. I did that first little coat the tongue thing there.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, we're gonna go in for a second. Get a little Kentucky chew. Tell us what you feel. As I clear my nostrils, my goodness. This is what you said, 125 proof. So
125. This is high.
Up there.
I had a pour of the 1792 single barrel I have earlier. It's like 98 proof. So this is about 30 higher than that. Whew. First, it's good. It's got a lot of volume to it. That may not make sense to some of you non-bourbon. There's Mikey's reaction. It's got a lot of volume. So some bourbons are thin. Some bourbons are like watery. Some have like an oily. This one feels like it almost expands in your mouth, if that makes sense. Like after that first sip, like it expands and I don't know. Like,
Stop that.
I'm
Brandon.
trying not to make it sound dirty. It's got more volume to it. Like I feel like even a sip, there's a lot more to the pour than just the average bourbon.
Right. There's some bourbons that you'll take a sip of and the flavor fades. It sits on your tongue and then it goes down your throat and that's it. It's done. Or even just trying to coat my tongue because I'm trying to get my mouth prepared for 125 proof. It instantly slammed into my cheeks. Even when I took the littlest sip, immediately slammed into my cheeks. Is that what you're talking about? Is there more to it?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot more to it. Like just talking, I feel underneath the tongue. There's a little bit of a singe to it, almost like it's warm, but it's not like it's on fire. But like, oh my, like that's different. Top of my mouth right away, like the roof of my mouth, which you normally don't. And that's why I say volume. Like it feels like it expands to touch all sides of your mouth as it coats your mouth, where sometimes it's usually just the tongue. Sometimes it's like a cheek. This one almost feels like a swelling sort in a way. And I've got a lot of oak and plum with that, with a little hint of caramel and almost, it's going to sound weird, but like a charred vanilla.
It's like it's not too sweet. It's like it's a oaky sweet. It's tame.
Yeah.
Where we've
it's
tried
sweet
some stuff
oak,
in the past
but it's not.
That was just too sweet.
This smells like it's going to be sweeter than it actually becomes. Right. It's fantastic. I mean, this is really good.
I think that I get that flavor up front, and it's like I think you said, it slams to the roof of my mouth. Last week we did the Heaven Hill Bottle and Bond, and my problem with it was the spice overcame too much of the flavor. And yes, while this guy is much higher proof, he is spicy. The spice doesn't overcome my mouth of flavor. It is hot. It is definitely hot, but I enjoy the flavor more. This is
finish
good.
is a very long finish. I almost get like an ice cream aftertaste on the back end, like
ice cream?
Not right away. Like as I talk, like the aftertaste of the coating that it leaves almost has like a vanilla ice cream aftertaste. You know, like when you finish ice cream and you still have the flavor in your mouth, but it's not like, oh my God, this is ice cream.
Dairy.
Yeah, you're coated with the ice cream flavoring. That's kind of how I feel that this is, with the lingering burn though. Like it's been about a minute since I had the last sip, and I feel a coating that is pretty decent. But on a rating scale, where would you put this?
I enjoy this flavor. I think it does have a burn. It's high proof, but I enjoy the high proofs for the flavor they really bring. I think it's such a great flavor. This could be an everyday player for me. I could
everyday player.
Yeah, everyday player. I could fight for him to move up a notch if it wasn't for how hot it drinks, but the flavor is phenomenal.
Can you explain to our listeners and our viewers what our rating scale? So if this is your first time listening, we do a baseball rating scale. It's a 5-tiered, 5-level rating scale, kind of on the baseball theme. Mike, can you break down a couple of them or go from top to bottom of what these are for our listeners?
Yeah, so if we have a pour that is just, we think is top shelf, phenomenal, one of a kind, that's our Hall of Fame. That's the top, I think that's the top name a baseball player can get. He was a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, right. So out of all the baseball players that have ever played the game, less than 1%, I think, have made the Hall of Fame. So that's how we're rating our bourbons, and we haven't gotten to that point yet, right?
Nope.
I don't think so.
Nope. I don't even think we've considered one that close. So then, of course, after Hall of Fame, which we have top of the top, we have, an all-star. All-star is someone who's the cream of the crop, the top guys in our current era. He's not an everyday play. He's better than the everyday player. He is going to be someone that you want on your team that season.
That you're constantly seeking out, right? Like you'd love to have, and it's almost like a goal kind of bottle in a way, right? Like
right.
You try to sign all-stars. You're not going for just a normal guy. Well, usually you try to get the all-star on your team. Sometimes you got to supplement with just an everyday guy or just a bench guy, which is going to be a fill-in. But all-stars are hard to find. Those are those allocated bottles usually, right? Sometimes not always just allocated. Sometimes you find a diamond in the rough. But I think the only all-star is the my rating of the King Ranch.
Right, that's the only one in B&B
so far. And then what's an everyday player?
Yes, so after all-star we go everyday player, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to it every day. This is the type of guy that you're going to run out there and you will grab on the shelf. That bottle is not going to necessarily last long on your shelf, but you're going to go to it and you want that every day. What's the term you use, Brandon, when you go through the bottle quickly?
Crusher. Yeah, I steal that from John Edwards over at Dad's Drinking Bourbon and Zeke. But a crusher, one that you're gonna look back at the bottle and like, how did I drink all of that already?
Yeah,
like
I definitely have my crusher right now. I got this Old Forester barrel strength. I got this maybe 2 months ago is all, and it's only got a couple pours left.
So that's where I think this differs. So you went with an everyday player with this full proof from BourbonFinds. I think I'm teetering between everyday player and a bench for the reason that if I had to rate it, this is not one I'm going to every day. I think this is a bench. It's just a little too hot for my liking, and I love the heat. Like my normal go-to pour is like a 115 to 120.
Right.
But that 131 Old Forester I would go to day in and day out because it doesn't drink like a 131. It drinks more like a 110 to a 115. This drinks like a 125. Not anything against it, but I'm not going to a 125 every single day. I love a high proof bourbon. I love a high proof rye. But this, to me, is going to get put to a bench just for the fact that I'm not going to go to this every day. I may go once or twice a week, but probably not going 3, 4, 5 days in a row for a pour from that. Like we were talking about crushers. Look at the Vantage.
Oh my gosh.
I sent you a sample and I sent one other person a sample, but I'm almost done. I got this bottle in October when I wasn't drinking.
Sober October.
So it's been 5 weeks and I've almost drank the whole thing. So that's like the definition of a crusher is one that you like, you keep pouring because you're like, that's good. That's good. That's
You're
good.
like, I want to pour. I want to drink something tonight. Let's change it up. Just kidding. We'll go with this guy again.
Right. And not only that, but like you go for a second or a third pour of the same thing in the same night. Sometimes, like I like to mix it up, but like, oh man, that's one that I want to keep tasting and keep going. I don't think that for me is quite here yet. I love 1792, and I love this pour. This isn't a knock, the bench rating, but it's just not one that I'm going to go to every single day. And a bench rating is just like a bench baseball player. You have them on your team because it has value, but it's not someone that's always going to be there. I would love to have this on my everyday lineup. Another thing that makes it hard is it's a single barrel select.
Right.
So you're not going to ever find another bottle like this ever again.
This bottle is unique.
You can emulate it. And that's what's so cool about bourbon, about whiskey, is single barrels. It could be one of the best bourbons you've ever going to have, and that makes it awesome. But you're never going to have it again unless you buy the whole barrel.
And that's a little bit of like bourbon. You know, there's the guys who like they'll go to the store, they buy a bottle, and they go through it. They go to the store, buy another bottle. When you have a couple different bottles to variety through, and you taste the different flavors, you kind of cherish one that you really find and love. Like, man, this one's so good. I think it was George Dickel, the Bottle and Bond George Dickel's fall 2013 when it was barreled was fantastic. It was fantastic. Everyone raved about it. I think then the fall 2014 one came out right away. Shortly after that, hype, and it was a disappointment.
Right. And each batch is going to be different. Each single barrel is going to be different, and that's what makes it so awesome and interesting. But also, like, if you find a bottle, you try to cherish the ones that you can find because you know that you're probably never going to have the same thing ever again.
And that quote from The Office of Andy, I wish someone could tell us when you're in the good times.
Yeah, I wish I wish you knew when you were in the good old days, when you were actually in the good old days, or something like that, right? But yeah, that's pretty good. Come on, Tuna. Tell us what the DFA stands for.
So we go Hall of Fame, All-Star, Everyday Player, Bench, and finally DFA, which is Designated for Assignment. We no longer are asking for your services on this team. Goodbye.
Yeah, that's. I'm taking this to the toilet and pouring it down the drain, or I'm giving it to my friends who don't like whiskey, don't want to drink whiskey, and I'm just going to mix it with a Coke. That's normally what I would call a DFA, something that I'm going to mix with a Coke or give to my wife and say, hey, out of the bourbon on my bar, if you want to drink whiskey, this is the one you mix with your Coke and make a whiskey Coke. Yeah,
you give it to your friend who's doesn't have quite the variety, and you say, hey man, here you go, this is an extra one I got.
Yeah, so that is DFA. We haven't gotten one of those either, so I think we've been predominantly between bench and everyday player, with I think the King Ranch, the only one that I've rated as a all-star, because I really enjoyed it. And again, big shout out to Bourbon and the Bro for that.
Yeah, that blind was awesome. I think that gives the label off.
And we've got
of
another one from I've got another one from Daniel at Bourbon_Hunt to send to you, and we'll probably have that within the next couple of weeks. So Daniel, I know it's been a couple of days, even probably at this point it's been 2 weeks since I got it. I'm gonna get it to Michael soon, and we're gonna break that down.
We've got shipments. We got regular shipments between each other.
Yes.
It's got to find its way over here.
Well, right now we're dealing with a supply chain issue. So we move on to the trivia portion of Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast. It's kind of what I use as our buffer between the bourbon and the baseball. Again, BourbonFinds. Go follow him on Instagram. And again, as this drops on Thursday, December the 8th, this is a shameless plug. Please vote for me. I'm going to get crushed by Brandon, the Daily Dram, but he's a good guy. He works for
you thought the
Bardstown
same
Bourbon
thing
Company.
for whiskey business, and you came out on top. 53% of votes.
She had 51%. I think I won like 51-49, so it was a very close. Yes, Brandon, the other Brandon. Here's my pitch. Brandon, the other Brandon. He works in Kentucky. He's got the Kentucky background, but Brandon, this guy, I'm funny. Vote for me. No, he works for Bardstown Bourbon Company. I believe he's the marketing manager or something along those lines. So, shifting to trivia. Please don't look this up. Before the Yankees drafted Fred McGriff, Crime Dog, the former Cub. He also played for the Rays, the Braves, the Yankees, the Braves, and the Rays, the Devil Rays. Sorry, the Devil Rays at the time. I can say it. Before the Yankees drafted McGriff back in the 9th round of the 1981 draft, they selected another future Hall of Famer in the 2nd round, but he did not sign with the team. Who was he?
In what draft?
1981 2nd round Hall of Famer. He didn't sign with the Yankees. Who was he?
Immediately you say Yankees, and it comes up in my mind Joe Torre. I don't know if that's far back enough for Joe Torre to have been drafted, but Joe Torre is what comes to mind. But judging by your face, you're saying no. So my 1B, because I always do 1A, 1B, is Lou, but even Lou Piniella is even older, so that doesn't work.
So you just went with old Yankee managers. That's
hey, if we talk baseball like pre-2000s, like 1995 pre. But if we talk any more current era, man, just like the last week's trivia, I got it, baby.
So being that McGriff played until like the early 2000s and Lou Piniella was a winning manager in 1990, I don't think it's Lou Piniella, and it's not. This is kind of a trick question. It was NFL Hall of Fame quarterback John Elway.
Oh, so he didn't even play baseball. He wasn't drafted later. Oh,
no. He was drafted in the 2nd round. He just chose to play for the Denver Broncos. So that was our baseball trivia question. Speaking
football
of baseball
trivia question, if I ever heard one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He was drafted in the MLB, so it's got a baseball tie to it. So there you go. We're a baseball and bourbon podcast, or a bourbon and baseball podcast, however you look at it. Speaking of bourbon and baseball, and a good segue with that is Walk-offs and whiskey. Cool shirts. They're awesome shirts. One of the most comfortable.
Soft.
They're so soft, right? Super comfortable. Go check them out. Walkoffsandwhiskey.com. They've got some very funny shirts to check out, whether it's whiskey related, baseball related. There's one I think I just got. It's called Calm Your Mitts, because that's something I always say to my wife, but with a different word when she gets angry. Or there is one I have is his whiskey, but the whiskey is key is what's highlighted on the 3 whiskeys. So
yeah, I love
stuff
my
there.
shirt. I go to it all the time to wear. It's so soft, it fits right.
They're lounge shirts. They're go out in public shirts. Like, that's what I love. I like to lay on the couch with them, or I'm more than happy to go out in public. And I've got a couple people who've said, "I love your shirt, man." So
like you work in a suit and a jacket and tie and everything. Do you?
Yeah.
I have a friend who doesn't undress. He wears what he wears to work when he gets home too. And I'm like, man, I gotta change into comfy clothes. I'm not gonna wear my nice clothes around the house. And so I'm always reaching for my my walk-offs and whiskey shirt.
I've got, I think, 5 or 6 of them at this point, and it's like a rotating line. But go to walkoffsandwhiskey.com. Use the promo code BNB for 10% off your order. Again, walkoffsandwhiskey.com. I promise you will not be disappointed.
That's
great guy there as well. He's a huge Astros fan, whiskey fan. So use that promo code BNB for 10% off your order. Speaking of baseball, the free agency period, the hot stove has been hotter than it's been in a long time. Michael, we had a huge 3 or 4 days here, especially starting on Saturday with the biggest name, I think, on the pitching side. I would say Judge is probably the biggest name of the free agents, but Jacob deGrom
Started all.
5 years, $185 million with the Rangers. What was your first initial thought when you heard it, and what was your thought on the Rangers rather than the Mets?
I enjoy seeing a big name going somewhere else. He's been with the Mets since at least 2015. I love seeing him sign. Not that it's like, hey, you stabbed your old team in the back. It's exciting for him to go somewhere else. It's to choose, because this is a time where he finally gets to choose where he wants to go. Free agency is a time where players kind of get to choose. Of course, they're chasing money, but so I was happy to see that Texas, who is building, last year signed Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, 2 shortstops to their middle infield. So now they're just adding to the pitching side of things. So
I wouldn't say the pitching side was even their worst. The starting pitching, I don't think it was awful last year. I think it was more their relief pitching. But they've got a very strong rotation at this point. Between deGrom, they just signed Andrew Heaney as well. Is it Heaney or Henny? I think it's Heaney.
So a righty and a lefty.
And he pitched for the Angels to start his career, or at least start a big portion of his career, and then he's been with the Dodgers here this past year. He got 2 years and $25 million. They have John Gray. They also had Martin Perez, who they had for most of his career. He went to Boston and then came back. So those are 4 starting pitchers that are pretty decent there now. Their relief pitching has been terrible. I think they lost the most one-run games out of any team in the league this year, because they only had a run differential of -54 for a team that only won games in the 60s. I think they were 68 and 94. So just think about, okay, if they lost 7 games less of those one-run.
Their run differential is only -36.
Oh, -36. Okay. And then the White Sox were what? Like -31?
Right.
I think.
And they finished.
And the Royals were -15. And the Royals were -15.
No, the Royals, no.
Oh, not the Royals. The Orioles, my bad.
The Royals are -170.
But yeah, and they only finished, a couple games ahead of the Royals at -170. But the Orioles were like, -15?
14.
And finished, and just finished outside of the playoffs. So that's just how close the Rangers were, Pythagorean theorem record-wise, for making the playoffs last year. So these will help them. I think they need a lot more work in the bullpen. Maybe they take some of that depth with Dane Dunning and some of those other starters who are on the fringe They've got 3 young studs in the minors. I know
Studs.
Kumar, Leiter. Who's the other guy? Call him Witt. Is that what his name is?
Cole Winn, Winn.
Win. Okay,
So,
I knew it was.
they've spent their last 3 out of 4 first-round picks that they had on starting pitching. And, man, Jack Leiter is a guy everyone would love to have. Kumar, how the Mets let him go over some medical stuff. Come on.
Mets gonna Met.
Mets gonna
Back
Met.
to the Mets gonna Met. But speaking of that, and they're going to be picking 4th in this upcoming year's draft. So they've got another top draft pick that they're going to be able to stock up with. And we'll touch on the draft here in a few minutes. But deGrom was the first domino to fall. The second one, falling very early on Monday right after that, was the second best pitcher on the market, who just came off a Cy Young.
Which you could argue is better pitcher.
Right, if you had to choose for the next 2 years, which is the contract that Verlander got, 2 years, $86 million with the Mets, and we'll touch on that here in a second. Of the two, who would you rather have for those 2 years?
For 2 years, deGrom hasn't pitched a half season's worth in 3-4 years. So Verlander, who just won Cy Young, had an amazing year at, how old is he?
He'll be 40 going in. I think it was his career year. I think he had like, what, 1.85 ERA this past year?
Right, which is top 25, I think, in single season ERAs.
And he did that as a 39-year-old. He's going into his 40-year-old season. He'll turn 40 in February.
And what's the quote? He said he wants to pitch till he's 45. So that confuses me a little bit.
So is he Tom Brady? Or
yeah, he took a 2-year deal till he's, 42? So
maybe he goes back to Detroit. Maybe he hopes Detroit's good again and that he goes and helps them win a World Series. But
yeah, I'm taking Verlander.
I think it would too, just for the health reasons. I mean, deGrom's younger by 6 years. He'll be 35 in June. He's 34 right now. The price is about the same. Verlander's making 43 a year, which is the second most ever. Scherzer at 43.3 on the same freaking team. They're both making 43 mil a year. And they start, 32 times a year?
Yeah, so they're paying 80-something million for 2 players
86.3
who aren't even going to play in half their games. Not even together. Never together.
No. Unless they make it to the playoffs, and at that point, you're not getting paid in the playoffs other than those bonuses. So right.
But
that's not part of your contract.
They say pitching wins championships, as we saw with the Astros this past year.
So they've got a 1A and a 1B, right? So, but what's behind that? They did just sign Jose Quintana to a 2-year, $26 million deal, which just shows you how high the salary for pitching is now. Like, what you're paying for pitching is Jose Quintana just got $13 million a year. 2 years ago, he was signing minor league deals to pitch. He just made 20. He was rough. He was with the Angels, and I think he started the year with the Pirates. If
you're signed with the Pirates right now, it's just a reclamation project. You're hoping to.
He was fantastic with the Cardinals, so I'll give him his flowers on that one in the second half of the year. So cheers to Quintana, former Cub. Best of luck to you. He'll be 34. He's only 34. Well, he will only be 34 going into next season.
He was He was a dark horse Cy Young candidate when the Cubs traded for him in 2017?
17. Instead of Verlander. They've got a link there, so they're going to be both pitching for each other. Verlander wanted to pitch for the Cubs, and instead the Cubs traded for Quintana, and then Verlander went to the Astros, and history's been set. He's won 2 World Series since then.
What could have been?
Yeah, but I agree. This is a long way of saying I'd take Verlander over deGrom. deGrom hasn't pitched more than 100 innings since 2019, back when he had 204. He's been a stud in the innings that he's pitched, but he just hasn't been reliable on the mound. And I think that's the one thing that scares me is he's not been healthy for 2020 was a short year because of the COVID year, but since then he hasn't been able to consistently put up.
Was 2019 his year where he went like 20 starts or something with only giving up 1 earned run?
I believe so.
But then he lost. He only won like a quarter of those games.
2021 was the year that he had like a 1.02 ERA, but he got hurt against the Cubs, and it was like 17 games in, and I don't think he pitched the rest of the season from there. He had the first half of 2021. He was the best pitcher I think that had ever played the game. I think that was the statistic that he was going on, but I don't know if he'll ever be that guy again.
Remember those trade rumors, Brandon, back to 2015?
Yep. I would have taken him. Yep. Now I would. At the time I said no, but now I wish I would have said yes. But I didn't make those decisions. Speaking of shortstop, we were just kind of referencing Javi Baez there as Cubs fans. First shortstop domino fell on Monday. Boy, what is it a big one. Trea Turner, 11 years, $300 million to the Phillies. What was your first thought on that?
I wasn't too surprised because Turner had voiced he wanted to be back on the East Coast. He wanted to spring training in Florida. He was at the top of my list for the Cubs. I think he was the number one shortstop out of the four: Correa, Swanson, and himself, and Bogaerts. There was early rumors that he wanted to go to Philadelphia. Kind of cool. We shared it as a story on Barrel and Barrels on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Him and Harper are both back together now from the Nationals World Series championship team. Reunited and it feels so good. Yeah.
Was Harper on that team?
Yeah.
He was?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't play. He didn't play though because he was hurt, I think.
When they won
that
the
was
World
the deal.
Series. Right.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before in here.
Yeah. But, I mean, consensus best shortstop out there. Turner, right. He was the one I wanted, and we'll touch on the other shortstops here shortly. But, man, good for him. 11 years, though, $300 million.
He'll be how old when he finishes?
40, because he's 29. He'll be 30 in June. So he'll be 40 when he finishes that contract. His speed's not going to be as great, but his speed is one of his better tools. But he's a 5-tool player. He's got fielding. He can play center field, too, if you need to, in a hunch or in a pinch. But classic 5-tool player, and his speed's probably going to play up here the next couple of years because of the shorter base paths, because the bases are bigger this year. And I believe that pitchers only are allowed 2 pickoff attempts, and then on the third one, if you are not successful, it's either an automatic ball or the runner gets the next base. I've got to look that up.
What I'm picturing is on that third pickoff, if they're going to commit to it, they are whipping that ball over. They don't care if they throw it past that first baseman. It's going to be cha, and they're going to be whipping that ball over there trying to get him.
So it says a pitcher will be able to step off the mound for a pickoff or any other reason a maximum of twice per plate appearance. The limit resets if the runner does advance via steal, wild pitch, or whatever. A pitcher can attempt a third pickoff, but if it does not result in an out, it is an automatic balk. So the runner gets the base no matter what.
Oh, wow.
So
it's like if he picks off twice, why not go?
You're going.
Go.
Right,
go.
because you're going to get the jump.
Well, what if you get picked off? Are you out?
Yeah, you get picked up, then the rundown, and then you're. If you escape the rundown,
so
you're
that's kind of a little bit cool factor. Like it's the third time. If he's already done twice as a runner, you're thinking I can go.
Right.
In a way.
So the thought is that there's going to be more stolen bases. So that plays up to Trea Turner's skill set for the next 2 to 3, maybe even 5 years, depending on how those base paths and how long that rule. I'm assuming they're going to stick with that rule, but we'll see. Another name off the list early on, was it yesterday, was Josh Bell signing with the Guardians, 2 years, $33 million. I was hoping he was going to sign with the Cubs. That's, I think, an underrated signing for a team that was in the playoffs last year who needed some veteran. They were the youngest team in baseball last year.
The Guardians?
And Josh Bell's, and they're still he's a young free agent, 30 years old. In 2 years, $33 million. That's not a terrible deal. I wanted the Cubs to sign him. He's got pop. He had a great year in, 2019? He started off the season fantastic and then tapered off a bit.
It was earlier. I think it was earlier than that. I had him in fantasy that year, and he had off to an amazing start in that first half. Was hitting bomb after bomb. And the second half, he just faded. He didn't repeat that.
2019, he had 27 bombs in the first half, batted .302. In the second half, he batted .233 and hit 10 bombs. So he faded off, but still hit 37 home runs in an entire MLB season. He's young. He used to be a switch hitter. Now he just predominantly hits from the left side. But he was a big pickup for the Padres. He had a rough go of it with the Padres with that Soto trade. But I think he probably would have got a bigger deal if it wasn't for that. But for the Guardians, that is a perfect under-the-table, no-pressure situation. I think he's just going to thrive there. So that's a great pickup.
He's been with the Pirates during their low years when the Cubs dominated the NL Central, then got bounced around to the Nationals, Padres. So maybe he'll find a home here with the Guardians, be able to know he's playing for the next 2 years for some maybe his final contract, and really take off, because he had the hype that O'Neal Cruz has right now with the Pirates as a top
He
prospect.
had the potential. He had the potential for MVP-like kind of status if he held it together. He just wasn't able to put a full career year together, first half and second half. We were talking about pitching. Taijuan Walker goes to the Phillies, 4 years, $68 million. The price for pitching, man, is
4 years,
outrageous.
$72 million.
$72 million. That's what I read the wrong thing, because he's right next to Jameson Taillon, who I would take over him, and I'm happy as a Cubs fan that we got him over Taijuan Walker. Taijuan Walker hasn't been healthy. They both the same player. Jameson Taillon,
both former top prospects.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. They had the pedigree of being incredible prospects, but Taillon goes to the Cubs, $68 million. They're about the same age. Really, they'll be the same age in August when Walker turns 31. Taillon has the slightly better record. The ERA is about the same. But, I mean, the Phillies, $72 million for your 4th or 5th starter in the
That's what
rotation?
I don't know if starting pitching or pitching has just all of a sudden just got expensive this offseason. But a couple of guys just like Walker, so I think a middle reliever signed for like 30-something million.
Was
for
it Tommy
2 years.
Kahnle?
No, it was before that. I can't remember who it was, but it was like, he's not even a closer, and you're signing him for tens of, $10+ million a year. God, what's going on?
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah,
Mike
you
Clevenger
saw what
look
happened
cheap.
with. Yeah, well, $12 million for Clevenger is a steal now when you got Quintana for 13 for 2 years. But yeah, so Taillon goes to the Cubs. That was an overnight kind of signing around midnight, Tuesday into Wednesday. 4 years, $68 million. Taillon was a stud. He was drafted second overall, you said?
Second overall. Mm-hmm.
In the 2010 draft. Do you know what that draft was?
2010?
That was the Bryce Harper.
Oh, so Bryce Harper went 1, Taillon went 2. So that's saying a good bit.
And then Manny Machado went 3. So he's got the pedigree to be a top 3 draft pick. He had a decent career in Pittsburgh for 4 years, and then he went to the Yankees for the last 2, where he's been okay.
He was in that Pittsburgh era of after they done well and the Cubs dominated. So I believe that Taillon. I think he could still have his best years in these next 4 years.
It's possible. He's 31. And as you see, Jacob deGrom's 34, and he's had incredible years over the last 3 or 4 years. So it's possible. He's got the pedigree. The Cubs get him in their system, which has been a very good pitching development system over the last couple of years under Craig Breslow. I think that he'd be a decent get. He could be a number 3, though, in a rotation. I don't think he's a top 2. I don't think he's an ace by any means. So he's a top 3. The Cubs probably need another ace. And the only one I think that might be out there is Carlos Rodon, and I don't see them signing him now. That
price tag of starting pitching.
Yeah. I'd rather them go after the shortstops and maybe trade for an ace starting pitcher at the deadline, or maybe wait till next offseason. I haven't looked at. He could be available. The Rays always get rid of it, and that would be a reuniting of Glasnow and Taillon, who were both the top starters for the Pirates.
Cool to pitch that against the Pirates.
Yeah, but speaking of the Cubs, they made a very big signing. I think it's a very big signing, dropping on Tuesday. Cody Bellinger, 1-year deal, $17.5 million. He is going to be the center fielder / I think first baseman for the Cubs. I'm more excited than I see a lot of Cubs fans about this. I think a lot of people are giving him too much grief and too much crap for being rough over the last 2 years. He's a former MVP.
And Rookie of the Year. Yeah, I think this is a turn.
Gold Glover.
Showing that a player, a potential star player, believes that the Cubs are on their way up. This is the same thing.
Right. He had 10, 11 teams looking into trying to sign him this
and
offseason.
he signed with the Cubs.
Right.
I'm sure they all offered him similar money.
Probably, unless you were the Marlins and the Rays, and they were probably like, "We'll give you $3 million." But
you'll be the star.
So here's a lot of people are complaining. Oh, that's a lot of money for a guy who's been terrible the last couple of years. Okay, he had a shoulder injury in 2020 during the World Series, I believe, is when the injury happened. I think in the NLCS. Right. The 2020 NLCS is when he got hurt. He had a rough World Series, but he still hit 12 home runs a year? Decent amount in
2020, the shortened season.
In 2020 in the shortened season.
56
so
games.
Times that by 3, that's 36 home runs. If you were to exacerbate it out to a 162 game season. And then he got hurt in the playoffs. He had shoulder surgery. The COVID thing, who knows if he had COVID? That changes the whole dynamics of someone's body from what people have said. Some people are still dealing with long COVID, so who knows? I'm not going to use that as an excuse. But he's a former MVP. It's not like he just all of a sudden stopped being able to play. He had 19 home runs last year. He was a 1.7 WAR player. He's 27 years old.
He's a child.
He's the youngest free agent out there, and it's not like a 1-year deal is a bad deal, right?
No, I mean, even if the Cubs they're trying to, this is a decision year where they're going to say, hey, we're competitive, things are clicking with our kids and such, and we're competitive. It's great if Cody Bellinger goes and fights for his next contract. If the Cubs aren't doing well and Cody is doing well, then hey, we sell him off for future pieces again at the deadline. Or if Bellinger does bad, then he's off the books next year. Not a big deal.
Right, $17.5 million for 1 year. If they have a great year and he has a great year as well, and he wants to go off on a different path, guess what? They give him a qualifying offer. If he has a great year and they like him, he's in the building already. So he already knows what the culture is like. He knows what it's like, and he's going to say, okay, yeah, I'll give you a deal. I'll sign here maybe for $20 million overall, less than what I was going to be paid because I like it here. I trust you guys here.
It happened with Jason Hayward, 2016. Right. He took less money to come to the Cubs.
So that didn't work out, but not everybody's going to work out, and who knows that. He's a Gold Glove defender, and he can play center field. He can play first base if you need him to step in.
I will take him over Kevin Kiermaier, who they
for sure.
linked to. He was more of a glove-first guy. He didn't have power. I will take Cody Bellinger smacking a home run every now and then, because in today's age, the old 300 hitter is now the new 280. 280 is now 260.
Even 265.
Yeah.
Right.
Kyle Schwarber hit how many home runs this year? And only batted like 223.
Was it that low? I thought it was 240.
It
but still, like 223.
But if it wasn't for Judge, he led the league in home runs in 47, 48.
And hey, Cubs fans who are complaining, name me a left-handed power hitter in that lineup last year.
Did we hit power in the stats of grounding into double plays? Jason Hayward. Rafael Ortega.
I think Ortega was probably the guy with the most home runs from the left side. Ian Happ. Okay, I'll take that back. But he was a switch hitter.
But that's it.
Other than Ian Happ, you didn't have a reliable left-handed hitter. So now you're going to have someone who can hit home runs, put them in the bleachers, put them on Sheffield, Cody Bellinger. And again, if it doesn't work out, it's a 1-year deal. I don't understand why so many people are freaking out about that Cody Bellinger signed with this team. He's a former MVP. He's 27 years old. Give him a chance. And if it doesn't work out, guess what?
Josh
He's
Donaldson
gone.
didn't break out till he was, 27, 29 years old.
Right.
Edwin Encarnacion didn't
So-
hit 40 home runs till he was 27, 29 years old.
Right. So, Cody Bellinger, I think he's a better signing than a lot of people give him credit for. Speaking of outfielders, Mitch Haniger goes to the Giants on a 3-year, $43.5 million deal. And I think that was the writing on the wall last night when we were on Instagram Live that told us Aaron Judge is heading back to the New York Yankees on the largest annual average contract for a hitter or a non-pitcher at 9 years and $363 million.
Yeah, we were chatting last night during the MLB draft lottery, and suddenly Haniger signed, and you had asked, "Hey, do you think that's the writing on the wall for that Judge isn't coming back?" And that was the same thing last year. Freddie Freeman is he coming back to the Braves? Are the Braves going to finally bring him back? And all of a sudden, the Braves traded for Matt Olson, and that you knew, that's the sign.
Right
the
then.
Braves have moved on, and that's I think what was the sign for the Giants. Because then shortly the next few hours, maybe Judge went to bed early that night, but this morning, right?
Yeah, it was early this morning. I think it was about 8 o'clock that I saw the notification on Eastern time. So it was probably 7 a.m. Central time. And on the West Coast where they're at for the winter meetings, it was probably before sunrise. But 9 years, $360 million. That's $40 million a year. Barry Bonds, when he signed his contract to be with the Giants in the 1990s, for 6 years, $43 million total. Aaron Judge might make that
43. That's what Mitch Haniger just got in 3 years.
in 3 years, and he's nowhere near Barry Bonds.
He's not even a superstar.
All right, so Aaron Judge, talk about betting on yourself and winning and being right.
Whew. What was he offered in
7
before the
years?
season?
What? 215, 220, seven and something.
He gained himself 2 years and $143 million.
Yeah, so that's talk about betting on yourself and winning.
Good
out.
for him.
Kenley Jansen, the best reliever so far to sign, 2 years, $32 million to the Boston Red Sox, who had a terrible year bullpen wise. I know they went bullpen by committee.
Closer by committee.
Closer by committee. My bad. That bullpen was probably one of their weaker spots. They lost a lot of games, right?
They
or at
had,
least blew
they
a
had
lot of games.
28 blown saves, which 28
That's a lot.
blown saves, which I think they had to have led the league in that, but they're not even the top 5 for most blown saves.
Are you serious?
The Rays actually lead the league with blown saves in 2022, 36 out of 80 save opportunities. 36. So we don't know. We don't
That's
know
not
if
a team
they
that you would
lost
think
all
to.
those games, but imagine
Right.
adding just 36 wins. If you had the team that
Right.
at the bottom of this list is the Orioles at 13. I couldn't even name the Orioles closer. Can you name the Orioles closer?
Was it Pablo Lopez, right? Is it who it was?
Pablo Lopez is
And
a
then he
starting
got traded
pitcher
to
for
the Twins.
Marlins.
There was a Pablo something Lopez who got traded to the Twins. That was their closer for the first half of the season, and they traded him to the Twins with their sell-off. I don't remember. I thought it was. Is it Taylor Lopez? It's
Taylor Rogers.
maybe
With the
that's
Giants.
No.
And then there's brothers, Taylor Rogers and Taylor. They're brothers, Rogers and Rogers. But
I'll look up the statistics.
So the
as we
blown
go
saves
on,
list,
but-
the Red Sox weren't even in the top 5.
Yeah.
And I think that all they've signed this offseason so far is relievers. But it was Rays, Marlins, Brewers, which the Brewers had freaking Josh Hader for the first half of the year. They had 30 blown saves. The Cubs had 30 blown saves. They really didn't have a closer. And then the Rangers at 29, and then coming at number 6 is the Red Sox and Pirates at 28. So the Red Sox adding I would say a bona fide closer. Jansen is he's getting up there in age. He's still a bona fide closer.
Yeah. He's 35, so he'll turn 36 next September. 2 years, $32 million, not a bad deal for him or the Red Sox. Last one, we won't touch much on it because we're kind of heartbroken about it. Wilson Contreras goes to the Cardinals for 5 years, and there's Michael smacking his mic off because he doesn't want to talk about it. 5 years, $87.5 million to the Cardinals. Kind of an FU to the Cubs after what they did to him.
Right.
That's on the Cubs.
He's been with the Cubs
man.
since he was 16 years. He's been with the Cubs for 16 years, 15, 16 years. He came as an international prospect at the age of 15, 16 years old. All he knows is Cubs, baby.
Yeah. He wanted to stay with the team. He was crying during the trade deadline, right? Wasn't he?
Yes. Within that final week, he didn't know when his final at bat was. And the day of the deadline, he was in Wrigley, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
And came up to in the ninth inning batting and was crying.
Yep. So he wanted to be with the team. Here's what I'd say. Best of luck to you, Willie. I hope you have an incredible career. I hope you go to the Hall of Fame. I want you to be the best catcher in the league, except when you play the Cubs. And I hope you strike out every freaking time you come to the plate. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Jorge Lopez was the closer, and then it shifted to Felix Bautista after he left for the Orioles. But Jorge Lopez with the Orioles had a ERA plus of 2.41, a FIP of 2.9, 1.68 ERA in 48 innings. So that's who got traded to the Twins.
So it was Taylor and Tyler Rogers, Twins and Giants.
Yeah, and then I think they traded Rogers.
To
the Twins traded there.
To the Padres.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
No. Very beginning of
the
year,
they traded. Yeah, and then he got traded to the Brewers, I think, for Hader. So that's who's already really signed the big guys so far. Who's left? We're going to go with Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson, Carlos Rodon. That's like your top tier. The second tier would be Chris Bassett, Brandon Nimmo, Kodai Senga. I know I listed Bassett and Nimmo on the top as well. Nathan Eovaldi, Andrew Benintendi, Michael Conforto, Brandon Drury, Noah Syndergaard kind of in tier 3, and then Michael Brantley, Trey Mancini, J.D. Martinez, who I think Trey Mancini actually ends up back with the Orioles, Craig Kimbrell, and then Dom Smith on like that fourth tier of free agents left to go. The big deal is going to be, where does Carlos Rodon end up? Probably, I would say the Yankees or the Giants at this point.
I would say the Yankees are going to pony. I don't know. I say that, but they just spent $360 million on Aaron Judge. But they need another pitcher.
Well, so I thought he was going to go to the Mets, and then they signed Verlander, and I don't know if he'll be heading that route.
I don't know where he goes.
It's going to be a really tricky deal and a tricky market for Rodon. I think it's either the Yankees or back to San Fran. So it's kind of like the Judge thing there, but who knows? Maybe another team comes out and surprises us. The big deal is going to be shortstop. Where do Bogaerts, Swanson, and Correa go? Who signs who?
I can't believe that Turner. I thought Turner signing was going to be the dominoes of shortstops, and it's been 2 or 3 days already.
It's been more than 48 hours, I believe, because it happened on Monday.
Come on.
And we're almost into Thursday. So yeah, incredible stuff on like where those three are going to go, because that's really the rest of the offseason. And then from there, I think the dominoes really start to fall. There's been rumors the Cubs might try to sign Xander Bogaerts and Dansby Swanson. There may be both. Carlos Correa. I heard that they were down the road on that one. The Dodgers are out on Carlos Correa because of the scandal back in 2017. But that, I think, not a homer here, but I think the Cubs are a major player in this shortstop market, and they may be the determining factor on where the dominoes fall from here.
Right, because the Cubs are involved in all three. Right. I think the fallback is Swanson because he's not the impact bat that Correa and Bogaerts would be. Correa and Bogaerts both have the glove to play shortstop, but they can also easily transition to third base if Swanson came as well. That would be a absolute team changing momentum if they were to land both those guys, two of the three.
Yeah, I would love a Bogaerts Swanson. I'd feel more comfortable having Dansby if it came with the Xander price tag as well. But of the three, I'm hoping for Xander. I think that's the least likely of the three. I probably go with Correa, Swanson, Bogaerts in the likelihood in that order for the Cubs. Where do you think they sign?
I think first I think my likelihood. I'm a Cubs fan, so I set myself up for disappointment. I think it's going to be Swanson, Bogaerts. Swanson, Correa, Bogaerts is the likelihood, even though my want is the backwards. I think Swanson ends up with the Cubs. I think Bogaerts goes back to the Red Sox for some reason, and Correa goes where the money is. And I don't know if that's San Diego, I don't know where Correa ends up if he's not with the Cubs. There's been rumors.
I think it might be the Twins. I think those are the two teams that I don't even think he'll go to the Yankees. I think it's the Twins and the Cubs.
The Yankees are out. They are out on him for the same reason the Dodgers are. They don't think their fan base would accept him.
Right.
But
because that was the big year. That was the 17
The Cubs
year.
were linked to him last year too, so I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up with the Cubs.
It's either the Cubs get Correa or they get both Xander and Swanson is what in my mind happens. But I think it's more likely Correa goes to the Cubs. I think Bogaerts ends up going to San Diego.
Can you imagine that conversation? Hey, Correa, we're going to sign you, buddy. All right, let us dot some I's and cross some T's. And then they're able to convince Bogaerts and Swanson. Hey, Correa.
Hey, buddy.
Hey.
Yeah. And I think Dansby actually ends up in L.A. with the Dodgers. I think that's going to be Trea's replacement.
They've got bats, so that makes sense. They could use a glove first guy over there.
And Trea's glove was kind of rough in the playoffs for the Dodgers and lost them, I think, a game or two versus the Padres. So
that's okay.
Or at least put them behind. Yeah, not complaining. But that's how I think that'll play out. We'll see. It's still very interesting. It's gonna be kind of a crazy. I think those are the three that's holding everything up. But from there, the other name. Do you have I think the most interesting name isn't one of those four. It's Cody Bellinger. What is he? Where's he gonna go? Still a lot of teams on him. The Mets supposedly are still in on him. The Rangers are still potentially in on him. Toronto, Seattle, the Giants, the Padres, the Cubs. What's your thought?
I think there's three teams. I think if Judge were to sign to San Francisco, he was going there. I think we've talked about that before. San Diego, I know Yu Darvish is there. They've got the shortstop Kim there as well. Mm-hmm. So Yu Darvish is talking to Senga and saying, "Hey, things are great here in San Diego, but also I did enjoy my time in Chicago." I have heard those reports that Yu Darvish is telling that, hey, he did enjoy Chicago. So I really think Senga. I want to, as I say it. Of course, setting myself up for disappointment again. I'm saying it. Senga's going to end up in Chicago. But then as I say it, I can just see the report. San Diego Padres signed Cody Senga.
Yeah, well, that'll be a very interesting one. The rest of them, I mean, do you have anyone that you would love to see outside of him on the Cubs? Or
I think he's that missing. Of course, Rodon, if the Cubs opened up, I think Rodon could be a number one. He has been injury riddled. I think a lefty pitcher. The Cubs don't have lefties. They don't have a lefty. Mm-mm. So I think
outside of Steele, that's all they got.
I think he'd be a great piece to come to the Cubs. I think he's probably more preferred than Senga, just because we know what we're getting with Rodon.
A known commodity. Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, outfielder-wise of what we talked about in our tiers, I don't think J.D. Martinez would be terrible as a DH.
No.
I don't think he'd be terrible for the right price. He had the last few years in Boston weren't great, but if he could just settle down as a DH and maybe he learned from a few years. I just got a baseball notification. Son of a bitch. Xander Bogaerts to the Padres, 11 years, $280 million.
What did I just say? What did I just say? Literally 5 minutes ago.
I just
got the notification.
Xander to the Padres, 11 years, 280. Son of
All right,
a
so
bitch.
as I open up our app, and we're gonna post this live on Instagram as you are
So
doing
I'll talk
this.
about it here as you're doing that.
Yeah.
So I think that now the dominoes are going to quickly fall. I think Correa signs within 24 hours. And then Swanson, the booby prize of shortstops, will sign as well. Maybe he draws it out just to get a little bit more money, but I think the line is in the sand now. Bogaerts signs. Red Sox fan Tommy is going to be absolutely crushed. He had his heart set on this. Now his only heart is to Devers' extension, but man, Bogaerts to the Padres.
There it is. There's the graphic. We had it made up already, ready to go. We had an idea that this could potentially be happening. So, what did I do? I literally just said it. Did I not? Right?
Damn it.
Literally just said it. That sucks as a Cubs fan, but
and Red Sox fan.
right. But so to me, you know what this means is I think that means that they're going to try to get out of the contract with Tatis. I think they may try to void that contract because of his issues.
He played a lot of outfield in the past
He
year.
could go to center field because that's where Profar was.
He actually, because in fantasy, I was able to slot him in the outfield. I had Tatis in 2021 on my team. I had him as a minor leaguer. I was able to slot him in the outfield, and then that was a big value going into 2022, is that he played enough in 21 to qualify for the outfield in 2022. Of course, he didn't play at all. Thankfully, I made the great general manager move of not re-signing him for the high price tag, and I signed Bryce Harper instead. Hasha, let's go. But I mean, for what you say, I don't think Tatis doesn't fit anymore. He's still not, but now he's pushed to the outfield. Machado's at third base, so Bogaerts can't slide over there. You got Kim, who's now sliding to second. So Bogaerts is now being looked at as the long-term shortstop for, 11 years. They've got Tatis for what?
280. So I know Tatis was over 300. But so talk about 11 years, 280. Turner just got 300. So a little bit less than that. What do you think that means for Carlos Correa?
Oh, that's not a good sign if you're a Cubs fan. If you're trying to get him on a shorter high AV, 6 years, 250, 280. Give him the, I don't care. Give him that. Give him the same dollar amount, 280 at 6 years. Just do it. I mean, what's that?
For
AAV?
6 years?
No, maybe 8. So 280 divided by 6 would have been holy. Okay, let's back up. That's 46.6.
Yeah. That'd be the highest paid player ever.
288 is 35 million. That's now with, hey, 8 years from now, 35 million is going to be nothing. So
right. So, whew, wow. That was crazy. You heard it here live. Well, it was live for us. You're going to hear it after it actually happened. But we were literally podcasting when this happened, and I just hit the sharing button and post. So you should get the notification here shortly. Oh my goodness. So that kind of changes the next thought on that. So it's probably Carlos Correa in my mind for the Cubs.
Like I said, the next 24 hours,
so
if Correa is not to the Cubs.
Here's my thought. Give Correa 200 over 6 years. That's 33. Is that not what Bogaerts? No, Bogaerts got less than that. Okay. That'll make him a higher average annual salary than Turner and Bogaerts, and he'll go back to free agency potentially at the age of 35, where he can make more money. And at that point, who knows what baseball is going to be like money-wise.
And money. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So don't lock yourself in with the economy right now. Go ahead and get that same high average annual value.
Yep.
And set yourself, if you push yourself 2 more years, that's 37. No one's going to sign you for money at 37.
No.
Unless you're Justin Verlander.
Right. Well, yeah, you're not going to be able to pitch. You're at that point, right? Your body. But Yeah, a couple more other free agents that are I think the one
that's such a shock. I'm just.
The one that flies under the radar, or I think would be the most under the radar, but smart signing would be Craig Kimbrell. Dude was a stud for the first half of last year, got traded to the White Sox, and then he got traded to a team he probably didn't want to be with. I don't know if he wanted to be with the Dodgers last year.
Well, even the White Sox. The White Sox traded for him and used him not in his classic role.
Do you have a player on the list that is probably an underrated player on your mind that you would like to see sign?
Andrew Benintendi was a great guy 1 year with the Red Sox. Conforto, he was the same as Schwarber. He was tied to the Cubs in that draft year. But my guy is in your tier 3, Brandon Drury. Who was drafted out of high school with the Braves, traded to the Diamondbacks, and he came up.
Was that the Dansby Swanson trade?
Was that the Dansby Swanson trade? Let's look at that. But he went to Arizona as a first baseman, I believe, and was overshadowed by
I think
Paul
he's
Goldschmidt.
a little too early for Dansby then. He may have been one of the Teheran was traded later on than that too. Well, he looks that up. What I'm thinking is
in the minors, he went to he hit 300. He hit for a little bit of power, and I don't think he ever got that chance
because of Goldschmidt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that'll be an interesting signing as well. I know Cincinnati fans loved him here and hated to see him get traded to the Padres, but it is what it is. The one thing that scares me is I don't think he had a really breakout year until this year. Every other year was kind of like, I think he played in 51 games last year with the Mets and then only hit 4 bombs.
So January 24th, 2013, the Braves traded Brandon Drury along with Martin Prado, Randall Delgado, Nick Ahmed, and Zeke Zubru for Justin Upton and Chris Johnston. I remember that year. Justin Upton, when they signed him. Did they get BJ first or Justin first?
They got BJ first and then they got Justin afterwards. Sorry,
looking back
it was
at that,
BJ. It's now Melvin
Upton Jr.
Yes.
But that's not an awful trade that the Braves did for Justin. And Chris Johnson was a good third baseman for them. For Drury, Martin Prado was still all right. Randall Delgado.
And he ended up with the Braves again, didn't he? Prado? Go back to the Braves?
Did he go back? I'm not sure.
And Delgado was one of those arms that they weren't sure because he was part of the whole, I think.
Dempster trade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was supposed to be a stud for him. And just Nick Ahmed turned out as a good shortstop prospect for them.
He's been a great defensive, and he's put some power into his bat here as of recent years. So.
Right.
But yeah, I think Drury's an underrated. I'm not giving him 3 years and $43 million like Mitch Haniger just got.
Haniger might just set the bar there because Haniger wasn't all that special either.
No. But that's what's pretty much left in free agency. You just heard Xander Bogaerts heading to the San Diego Padres. What did I say? Right, like 5 minutes before that.
What did you say, Brandon? What did you say?
I said that Bogaerts probably heads to the Padres. That tells me that Dansby's going to the Dodgers because they're going to have to counteract that, and that the Cubs are going to get Correa. If Correa doesn't go to the Cubs, it's probably the Twins. But I think that's what that's all going to settle out as. Get to your bookies,
folks.
Whew. So, real quick, the MLB draft lottery was last night. That was the first time that's ever happened before. I think the MLB dropped the ball on that one, buddy.
Yeah, we talked about going live on Instagram for it and talking about it, and then I jumped into it like, hey, let's do this. It's the first one. I remember. It's kind of the idea like if you don't remember, if you weren't watching it, you don't remember it, So I pulled out a specific bottle. Was expecting to talk about, hey, here's pick by pick, who's getting what. And the MLB botched it. I mean, it was seconds that they went through, picked 18 through 8 or through 7.
Yeah, I hopped on the live and you were like, they're already at 12. And I was like, what?
Yeah, that was poorly done. The guy that, so spoiler, number 1 overall was the Pirates. And they had a representative from each team sitting at its own table with a hat from their team. And when the Pirates guy got number 1, he was just like, cool. Just straight
fine.
Yeah, this is fine. Like, it's like they did it so fast that nobody in the room had an idea what was going on. That was awful.
Well, they could have really played this up big time, but they didn't, and that's the sad part of this whole thing. And again, MLB drops the ball on what could have been a fantastic event, and just didn't come through. Pittsburgh picking number 1, Washington picking number 2. The Tigers will be 3, Texas 4, as we mentioned earlier in the pod. And then Minnesota jumped up from position 13 to 5?
That was the biggest move and biggest win. No one really dropped too much, but the Twins really moved up.
And then Oakland Athletics, they dropped the most. They went from 3 to 6, and they will be picking 6th in the MLB draft in 2023. So the big news: Xander Bogaerts is heading to the San Diego Padres on an 11-year, $280 million deal to be with the Padres. This puts him with Manny Machado, Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis, and all the other talent with Joe Musgrove,
and still watching the World Series from their couches.
I don't know. This may so you're basically putting Xander in there for Yerkes Profar.
And Xander he can hit home runs, but he also hits for good average.
Mm-hmm. So, major move out here tonight for the Padres. So that's really all we've got. Free agency, we've already gone. Thank you to everyone who's stuck around.
To buckle up for the next 24 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Major move as he's heading to the Padres. Wow. For those of you looking ahead to the next couple of weeks in Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast's life, we're looking at more bourbon and whiskey reviews, so check out those. We'll have a couple more of those down the line. Free agency news, we just had one drop live. You're going to have probably read about it at this point, or if not, you heard it live here on Barrels and Barrels. But watch out, as Michael just said, more dominoes likely to fall. And then we'll probably have a Get to Know Us podcast. Why are Mikey and I baseball fans? Why are we Cubs fans? Bourbon fans, and all of that. So look for that coming up. As far as Instagram, Michael, yours is underneath your name on our YouTube channel if you're watching us here. But for those of you who are tuning in on Apple or Spotify, Amazon, where can they find you?
On Instagram, of course, I am BNB_Burns, and on Twitter, it's BurnsBNB. So just if you search for BNB Burns of some kind, you'll find me.
And I am whiskey_weather. Go vote for me in the BourbonFinds bracket, which is currently underway on Instagram. So just search BourbonFinds on Instagram, and you should be able to vote for me in the stories. As far as our Instagram as a page, which we just put out that Xander Bogaerts post, at Barrels and Barrels Pod. DM us, and hey, here's our call. If you are listening to this, we've been going for about an hour and 30 minutes. Thank you for staying with us. This is one of our longer podcasts, but a lot of news and a lot going on here. Thanks for listening. Email us, barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. And maybe if you do, I'll send a sticker to you for
Hey, if you're listening at this point, got through this juicy baseball stuff that we've been going through. The winter meetings are fun. If you email us at our Gmail, and I'll send you a sample of this full proof if you want it.
That's a good deal. So yeah, please. And if you have any comments, we'd love to hear them. So yeah, that's a call for emails here. An hour and 32 minutes into the podcast. If you're still listening, we'd love to know that. Give us feedback. You like this, you don't like that. And that's another call to please rate and review us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anything along those lines. We are now on Amazon as well. You can watch us on YouTube, Barrels and Barrels, and we're on Twitter, Barrels and Barrels, Facebook.com/Barrels and Barrels Pod. We also have a link tree. Just search Barrels and Barrels. Again, listen to us, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, and Amazon. Thank you, as always, for listening. You guys are what make us great. You guys are why we do this, because we love you guys, and we love talking baseball. So, again, thank you so much. Xander Bogaerts heading to the San Diego Padres. 11 years, $280 million. Both Michael and I are brokenhearted. But thank you for listening to Barrels and Barrels and maybe even watching. This has been a Bourbon and Baseball podcast, episode 11. That's all I have to say. Michael, take us away.
Let's go.
This is Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast with your hosts, Brandon Spinner and Michael Burns.